Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. Back here today after one heck of a weekend for Purdue football, heading to Iowa City and taking down the number 2 Hawkeyes. We didn't exactly predict it on the show, but we let you know that it was a possibility. Now, after the win, the Boilers are in the AP Top 25 for the first time since 2007. And they're heading home with the chance to end another drought, this one against Wisconsin. First, before we dive in, want to make sure, follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. We've got constant updates related to Purdue sports. I'm always providing my thoughts there. We're right in the heart of sports season. Football's halfway through. Basketball is a couple of weeks away. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be here every week, and it's going to be busy from now until late March, early April. Who knows when that one will end, but you'll want to make sure. Follow the show on Twitter and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. But Purdue, 24, Iowa 7, final score from Iowa City. And, it was interesting because before the game, you didn't get great news. We found out later in the week after last week's episode that Corey Trice and Abdur-Rahman Yassin are out for the year. Corey Trice with a knee injury. I didn't catch what happened to Yassin. If someone remembers, shoot me a tweet, let me know. Remember, Yassin was only practicing every other day to begin with. He was nicked up, dealing with some stuff. So he wasn't even practicing every day. He's done for the year. Corey Trice, knee injury in practice as he was coming back from an ankle injury. Really disappointing there. Trice is an excellent player. He's Purdue's best corner, no doubt. They'll miss him eventually this year. They didn't miss him on Saturday, but eventually Corey Trice will certainly be missed. He is a very good player and has that NFL defensive back frame at 6'3". In this game, though, Purdue struck first, and they never looked back. They didn't trail the entire game. Aiden O'Connell scrambled for a touchdown that got the scoring started. A couple of touchdown passes, one to TJ Sheffield and one to David Bell. Purdue 4-1 versus Iowa during the Jeff Brom era. And this is the second top 5 win that Brom has notched at Purdue. No one will forget the other one, 2018 versus Ohio State in West Lafayette. And if you watched this game, and I always assume that most of you all do, Purdue looked like the better team in this one really from start to finish. It wasn't a situation where Purdue looked overwhelmed by Iowa. Now, Iowa isn't your typical number 2 ranked team. They aren't an explosive offense. They are a team that relies heavily on turnover margin. They aren't what you normally think of when you think of a number 2 team, and they certainly aren't the same as that number 2 Ohio State team with Dwayne Haskins, with Terry McLaurin, that Purdue beat in October of 2018. That was a J.K. Dobbins running back. That was a really explosive offense that Purdue didn't even neutralize. Ohio State had 500 yards of offense in that game, but a much different upset than what Purdue had in the Ohio State game. The number 2 ranking is really where this comparison can stop. But going through takeaways, I'm saying this every week at this point because it amazes me every week how good this defense is. Purdue held Iowa under 300 yards of offense in this game, and that was while having a 3-possession lead for the last 12 minutes when Iowa was really able to rack up yards in garbage time before Petrus started throwing some interceptions. 4 takeaways, speaking of those interceptions, all of them from Petrus, all of them picked off. Now, in fairness, one of those was the last play of the game. Cam Allen picked one off in the end zone. Another one was kind of in garbage time as Iowa was desperate, but they all count the same. Purdue only had 2 turnovers on the year coming into this one. Getting 4 was huge. Purdue had 10 tackles for loss in this game, and that's something that you really don't see a lot against Iowa teams. Now, this Iowa offensive line isn't your typical offensive line from Iowa that you always think of when you think of Iowa or Wisconsin. That's not what this group has. They have one elite lineman, Tyler Linderbaum, the center, but outside of him, it's just not your typical Iowa offensive line. Purdue was able to exploit that, though. Kydron Jenkins, George Karlaftis, Branson Dean, all fantastic up front. And Purdue had 4 sacks in this game, really getting to Petrus well. Karlaftis was everywhere in this game. I think he knocked Petrus down 3 times. And Purdue held Iowa under 100 rushing yards. That's something that I certainly didn't think Purdue would do coming into this game, because that's how Iowa wants to play. You know, they want to run the ball, but Tyler Goodson only got 12 carries in this game because Purdue got out to a lead and Iowa had to throw the ball. And I said on Twitter before the game, you have to make Petrus beat you. Make him throw the ball. He hasn't had to do it all year. Well, Purdue did, and we saw how that went. Petrus was 17 of 32, 195 yards, and 4 interceptions. He's not that great. He's not awful, but he doesn't have elite talent at receiver. His best weapons are really at tight end with Sam Laporta. This wasn't an Iowa offense that really scared you coming in, and Purdue's defense was able to prove it. Purdue's secondary was very good. You know, it's not a great Iowa passing attack, but Cam Allen, Marvin Grant, they were all over the place in this one. Fantastic day for this defense. They are really, really, really impressing. Fantastic stuff from Brad Lambert and company there. And then on offense, you know, the big storyline, David Bell versus Iowa. His 3rd game versus Iowa and his 3rd outstanding game versus Iowa. This time, 11 catches. 11 catches is his career low versus Iowa. 240 yards and a touchdown. In his 3 total games versus Iowa, 37 receptions, 558 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Adding to the intrigue of that a little bit is the fact that Bell very strongly considered Iowa when he was coming out of Warren Central. That may have been Purdue's biggest competitor in that recruitment. This was absolutely fantastic from him. He killed Iowa in every facet. The short passing game, you know, he caught a crossing pattern, took it 60 yards or so, had a very nice catch in the end zone on a deep ball, had some nice intermediate catches as well on some out routes, some slant routes. Really, really good day for David Bell. You know, there's just nothing else to say. He is an Iowa killer. He certainly benefits from Iowa not being the most athletic team on the back. Riley Moss, their number 1 corner, was out in this one, and it was a tough day for Matt Hankins trying to cover him. But as a whole, you know, the Purdue receivers were very good. TJ Sheffield, 8 receptions and a touchdown. I really think this was his best game of the season, if not the best game of his career. You know, 8 receptions, only 48 yards, but he was really good. Milton Wright had another solid game as well, 4 for 38, but, you know, there were only so many opportunities that didn't go to David Bell. Brock Thompson had a very nice catch on a very difficult play to make. A deep ball going back shoulder from Aiden O'Connell in the third or fourth quarter. I can't remember there, but that was an excellent play. You got Payne Durham back in this one. He didn't have a huge day, but, you know, getting him back is key. Keeping him healthy is going to be massive going forward. The topic that everyone wants to talk about, and I got a lot of questions about this from Twitter, which I certainly expected, was the way Jeff Brom handled the quarterbacks in this game. Aiden O'Connell played the whole first series. And then Jack Plummer comes out for the first play of the second drive, and everyone's thinking, is this a benching? Has Jeff Brom already seen enough? Are we back to the 2017 wheel of quarterback style? Nope, that wasn't it. Just coming in for one play at a time. Plummer came in for a few. Austin Burton came in for a few. Aiden O'Connell took almost every single snap in this one, and Aiden O'Connell was fantastic. 30 for 40 through the air, 375 yards and 2 touchdowns. As I mentioned already, he had that other touchdown on the ground as well. Certainly not the quarterback you would expect to have ran one in, but he did it. Plummer, 5 times on the ground. He had 20 yards rushing. Also was 1 of 2 through the air. Austin Burton, 3 carries for 10 yards, 0 of 1 through the air. So, it was interesting. Purdue certainly used it more in the first half than they did the second, but it was very interesting to me to see Plummer's mobility used in this game, because that was really part of why Jeff Brom named him the starter to begin with, but we didn't see designed runs for Jack Plummer much at all. And then in this one, you do. And he did pretty well. There was only one run that really didn't go anywhere, and that was because Payne Durham slipped and missed his block going to block. Plummer may have been able to get into the end zone if that block was made. Austin Burton, he's the most mobile option this team has. You can't take anything out of his one pass attempt. It was a throwaway. But, it's interesting to see this. If nothing else, it keeps the defense on their toes. It keeps opposing coordinators up. Who knows? It's something I think we're going to keep seeing. Jeff Brom kind of alluded to that in his Monday press conference. He wants to use the talents of all 3 quarterbacks. Now, I don't know if this is, I don't necessarily understand it all the time. You're going to have to throw out of some of these sets to make them work. Plummer, certainly that is an option. Burton, we really haven't seen him throw a meaningful pass outside of his throwaway on Saturday. If you're going to do this outside of the red zone especially, you're really going to have to throw out of these sets with the other quarterback in the game to make sure the defense respects it and doesn't just load up the box. If you didn't chuckle a little bit when Purdue was shuffling quarterbacks in and out, you really probably hate fun. I mean, this was kind of hilarious. It was weird. It was unique. It's something I've really never seen, and it worked for Purdue in this one. I think we'll see it again on Saturday, and we'll be back to talk about it next week. The big takeaway from the Minnesota game was that Purdue had to get better at scoring in the red zone. They did better, not good enough in my book in this game. Purdue still settled for a pair of field goal attempts inside the red zone. The first one did not go well. Mitch Finneran missed, and then he made the second one. You really want to see those end in touchdowns. Purdue was 3 for 5 in the red zone, although it's a little misleading. David Bell's touchdown catch came from the 21-yard line. If that's at the 20, that counts as a red zone conversion. And then Purdue's only turnover on the day, TJ Sheffield's fumble when he was reaching out for the pylon, that counts as a turnover. It counts as a touchback. I know it's a dumb rule, but you can only play the cards you're dealt. Tough break for sure. Purdue would have had, assuming that ball didn't come out, Purdue would have had 4th and goal at about the half-yard line. Instead, Iowa got it at the 25. Credit to Purdue, though. They were able to force a 3-and-out right away. The special teams game is still a mixed bag for Purdue. This is 2 games in a row with a missed field goal for Mitch Finneran. He had been rock solid through 4 games. He made a couple of kicks against Minnesota and then had a 37-yarder in the pouring rain that did not go in. The 32-yarder he missed in this one, pushed it right, wasn't really close. The make from 31 was clean. This can't be a problem for Purdue, and I don't think it's going to be. I think Finneran will be fine, but you really kind of have to worry. If there is one area that Purdue can't afford to slip up in, it's that kicking game, because as you look forward, Purdue's going to play a lot of close games. A lot of games are going to be within a touchdown point spread either way. In fact, I think it's maybe fair to say that every game from here on out, besides the trip to Ohio State, will be that way. So, got to be better there. Iowa had a couple of big kick returns that Purdue's going to want to make sure they shore up on in practice this week. But, nonetheless, 24-7, Purdue wins the game. A big upset. Purdue was about 11-point underdogs. Looking back on our keys to the game, Purdue, the number one key was Purdue couldn't help Iowa. You can't give that defense turnovers, and Purdue didn't. They thrive off interceptions more than anything. Aiden O'Connell was money. The one turnover that they had, Purdue didn't suffer from it at all. 3 and out, offense was right back out there. In the red zone, as we mentioned, Purdue was better. They weren't great, but they were better. You want to see that continue to improve. And then, you really just wanted to see Purdue force a turnover in this game, because they'd gone 3 straight games without forcing one. Didn't force any of consequence besides the Oregon State game when Cam Allen had a pick. Now they have 4 here. The luck, maybe it's turning back Purdue's way a little bit when it comes to turnover margin. You hope so. You would love to see Purdue get some momentum there and start capitalizing on turnovers. Now Purdue's ranked. Hey, as I said in the open, first time since 2007, and that was one short-lived appearance. Purdue was 5-0, snuck into the polls at number 23, welcomed number 4 Ohio State under the lights in Ross-Ade. 23-7, the final score. I believe Purdue scored with like 8 seconds left in that game just to get on the board. Tiller's second to last season. Disappointing loss there, and that really was the last time that Purdue really felt like a top 25 team and a top 25 program. The recruiting started to fall off towards the end of the Joe Tiller days. By 2007, there was still some talent there, but it wasn't what it was. And by the end of the 2007 season, the program had fallen off a little bit. They had a dramatic win in the Motor City Bowl that was a lot more dramatic than it should have been. And the next year was Joe Tiller's last. Now, Purdue back in the polls, hosting Wisconsin, a 3 p.m. kick on BTN. Wisconsin opened up on Sunday as 5-point favorites. Money has come in on the Boilers and knocked that down to 3. Over-under point total of 41.5 initially, and I think that's moved down a little bit since. As you are well aware, I am sure, Purdue has not beaten Wisconsin since 2003. Kyle Orton aired it out in Camp Randall Stadium. Big days for John Standiford and Taylor Stubblefield. Ben Jones with a game-winning field goal as time expired. The following year, College Game Day came to Purdue. The Boilers were ranked number 5. The rest is history. That game did not go Purdue's way. Kyle Orton fumbled. Wisconsin returned it for a touchdown. And Purdue really kind of fell off the rest of that season. Lost 4 straight games after that. And, finished in the Sun Bowl. Lost that. Really disappointing end to Kyle Orton's career. But now, Purdue's looking to end that drought 18 years later. They very well could have ended it 3 years ago in Ross-Ade Stadium, but didn't. Now, Wisconsin returns to Ross-Ade, and this is a good chance for Purdue to do it because this is not a great Wisconsin team. 3-3 on the year. They are 1-2 in the Big Ten. Their losses overall, all quality losses. I mean, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Michigan. But what's really noteworthy is that Graham Mertz has been really underwhelming this season, and that's for the second straight year. He had the phenomenal debut last year against Illinois, absolutely tore them apart, then tested positive for COVID, and really just hasn't looked good since. Lots of fanfare coming in. I had the highest-rated quarterback recruit Wisconsin had ever landed, 4-star recruit out of Kansas. This year, though, 55% completion rate, 2 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. That is not what you want at all. He doesn't have a great group of pass catchers to throw to. Tight end Jake Ferguson's pretty good, but they don't have a Quintez Cephas on this year's team that's going to make big plays downfield. But it's still Wisconsin. They know their bread and butter. They're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to rely mostly on Clemson transfer and one-time Purdue target back in the transfer portal, Ches Malusi. He's the lead back. He will see plenty of volume on Saturday. Braylon Allen will see some as well. You know, he's kind of their number 2 back behind Malusi. But if you're looking at Wisconsin's schedule and their results, don't let those high point totals from Notre Dame and Michigan fool you at all. Notre Dame put up 41, Michigan put up 38. This defense is very, very good. Both those games, Graham Mertz threw some picks, led to easy scores, especially in that Notre Dame game when he threw 4 interceptions. I think a couple of them were returned for touchdowns. If you look outside of their losses, you can ask Illinois how much fun that Wisconsin defense was to play against. They absolutely terrorized Brett Bielema's offense, and they're only allowing 225 yards of total offense per game. That is far and away the best in the Big Ten. Purdue is right behind them at 290, and they're number 2, I should say. Right behind them, well, they're averaging 65 more yards a game. This is going to be a smash-mouth game. You saw it with that point total at 41.5 and going lower. That is one heck of a slugfest. That's how Wisconsin wants to play. Schematically, they're very similar to Iowa. You all know that. This is Big Ten West football. That's how this always is. They both are going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to establish it early. This year, they're going to try to hide their subpar quarterback. They don't want to show that off. They want to make sure that when Graham Mertz is making throws, that they're high percentage, they're short. Maybe they'll let him throw a deep ball out of play action, especially down the sidelines where if you miss, it's out of bounds. They're going to be very, very conservative if they can be. If you're Purdue, you got to find a way to do what you did with Spencer Petras and make that quarterback throw it. With Petras, you knew that he had potential to make a lot of interception, to have interception problems. With Mertz, you've seen it already. You've seen him have interception problems. You knew that Spencer Petras could lose a game. You've seen Graham Mertz lose games. That's kind of the difference here. You've already seen what can happen. Purdue's going to be trying to get there. The problem is, this is not a good spot for Purdue. You really worry about a letdown here because, as we mentioned, the last time Purdue beat the number 2 team in the country, they had a big letdown the next week. They went up to Michigan State, which that was an awful spot for Purdue. That is a trip that Purdue buses to. That is not a trip Purdue flies to. That was a dreary day, cloudy up in East Lansing. I was there for that. Purdue came out slow. Rocky Lombardi was at quarterback for Michigan State, making his first career start, and they won 23-13, and it really was never in doubt. Michigan State won that game easy. Now this time it's a little different. You won that game on the road, and now you're coming home. You like that spot a lot better. It's a sellout at Ross-Ade. It's going to be a very, very electric atmosphere. From what I'm seeing right now, it should be a nice day, upper 50s and sunny. is what I'm seeing for here in West Lafayette. If that's the case, it's going to be an awesome day at Ross-Ade Stadium. Can Purdue focus? They're getting plenty of love all week. Jeff Brom was on ESPN this morning. Jeff Brom was on the Dan Dockett show today. He's getting all the media love. David Bell's getting the love. Everyone's talking about Purdue. Can they stay focused and come into this one and find a way? Ideally, we're at the halfway spot now. And ideally, you win one of these next two. If you can head to November with 5 wins, that's huge. Remember, the odds makers only had Purdue winning 5 games all year. That was your over-under. Purdue's at 4-2 now at the halfway point. If you have 2 chances here. You have Wisconsin at home, and you go to Nebraska to finish the month of October. If you can win one of those, and you're at 5-3 going to November, you really, really, really like your chances to go to a bowl game. Michigan State, Ohio State, Northwestern, Indiana in November. Michigan State is undefeated, but they're very beatable. Ohio State, going to be tough. Northwestern does not look good. Indiana, well, love doesn't win football games. I will say that all year. Indiana fans like to talk about Jeff Brom's contract the last few years. Now they're paying Tom Allen $5 million a year. They're 2-4. Their offense is terrible. That's a game that Purdue may be favored in as they come to Ross-Ade to end the season. So you're in a great spot here. I've said all along, making a bowl game to find success for this team. You are in a great position to make a bowl game. Now, to get to that 5th win on Saturday against Wisconsin, 3 keys to the game. Number 1, start strong. You saw the effect of a good start last weekend in Iowa City. You want to make Wisconsin come behind because that means Graham Mertz is going to have to throw the ball. And if Graham Mertz comes out and beats Purdue through the air, I will happily eat my words next week on the show. He hasn't shown the ability to do that this year. Make Graham Mertz throw it. Make Wisconsin come from behind. String together first downs. This is going to be huge. Wisconsin's defense is excellent, but you can really start to wear them down a bit if you can string together first downs. And I'm not talking about some Wisconsin-style 16-play drive, but if you can get 2 to 3 first downs, have 10-play scoring drives, that's going to wear down that Badger defense, and that's going to keep Purdue's defense well-rested on the sidelines. That was what Purdue was so effective at against Iowa. It felt like the entire second half, Purdue had the ball, and by the end of the game, Purdue's defense was out there forcing turnovers, getting into the backfield, and Iowa's defense was exhausted out there. Finally, number 3, special teams. Purdue's an underdog in this one. Underdogs cannot make special teams errors. You can't miss field goals. You cannot allow the long kickoff returns. Iowa had that kickoff return late that went all the way to the 20. You can't have that happen again. Jack Ansel's been fine. You need that to continue. You'd love to see him boom off a couple of big ones in this game because field position is going to be very, very important. Every point's going to matter in this game. Now, I'm going to go with Purdue winning this game. 20-17. That score haunts a lot of Purdue people. That was the score back in 2004. But that's how Purdue's going to end this drought, by turning it on Wisconsin. Why not? It's not a good spot to back Purdue. I know that. But this Wisconsin team just isn't all that great. Mertz doesn't scare you. Malusi's fine. You don't know what's going on in that locker room, though. Jalen Berger was one of Wisconsin's better running backs last year. He's left the team, been dismissed. I don't know what's going on. I know it doesn't sound like Paul Chryst is absolutely loved up there. Streaks are meant to be broken. This is the longest drought Purdue's ever had against an opponent. Breaking this one would be massive. Purdue 20, Wisconsin 17. There's the prediction. Now, our Q&A segment here, And the first question fits right into this. How is Wisconsin favored coming into Ross-Ade? Well, all of this is done based off of a power rating. And that's how the lines are made. And it's probably fair to still have Wisconsin power rated ahead of Purdue. Wisconsin's preseason expectations were much higher. Wisconsin did look very good in their win against Illinois. They just took it to them, 24-0. The other two wins against Army and Eastern Michigan, they've looked fine. Only a 6-point win against Army last weekend. But, the physicality, the spot certainly doesn't help Purdue coming off the big win. That's prime letdown position. And then certainly I think the 18-year drought has something to do with it. Purdue has not historically been good against Wisconsin. A lot of those games during the drought haven't been close. So I think if you add all of that up, it makes sense that Wisconsin's favored, but I don't think very many people would be surprised to see Purdue pull off the win outright. Next question, kind of two separate questions, but they're very similar. Why has Purdue had so much success against number 2 teams? Why has Brom had so much success versus Ferentz? The first one's pretty hard to answer. I mean, success versus number 2, Purdue, it'd been a while since Purdue had done that before Brom got here. It's just kind of luck. And a lot of those wins came a long, long time ago. I can't really give you too much there, but Brom's success versus Ferentz, that one's a little more explainable. Iowa's strength is not athleticism in its defensive backfield, and Purdue is loaded at receiver. And when Brom finds a matchup he likes, he's going to keep throwing at it. We saw that with Anthony Mahungu, Terry Wright, and now David Bell. That's why Purdue's able to have success against Phil Parker's defense that is very, very stout usually. Purdue just does things a little bit differently than what you see in the Big Ten West. Purdue's kind of alone in its aerial attack in the Big Ten West. So you see something in Purdue that you don't see in a lot of other teams in the division. That differentiating factor, I think, really helps Purdue and makes it a lot more difficult for Iowa to stop Purdue when they only have 1 week to prepare. Got a question, about a Xander Horvath update. Brom said he's not optimistic. I can understand why. I personally, and I have no reason to say this other than just noticing the way Brom talks about injuries in the past, I don't expect to see Horvath back this year. I'm not counting on it. I would love to see him come back. Certainly it'd be a much brighter way to end the young man's career if he can come back and finish it out, maybe win an Old Oaken bucket, maybe get to a bowl game. But, breaking a bone in your leg is pretty tough stuff to come back from. Different circumstances with Rondale Moore a few years ago, but, you remember the always week-by-week deal. He was never going to come back. You kind of wonder if part of this is just to keep opponents off guard. Part of it's maybe just optimistic, but I really don't know that we're going to see Xander Horvath anytime soon. Maybe my favorite question here, what did Purdue do over the bye week that resulted in the offensive line improvement in pass protection? Very, very good question, and I wish I had a better answer because it's the same personnel. Cam Craig played a little bit more in this game. I think we're going to keep seeing him increase his snap count, maybe see him over Eric Miller at right tackle some, but Purdue just did a very nice job. Purdue didn't hold on to the ball for too long. O'Connell did a nice job of getting the ball out. There weren't a lot of plays where O'Connell was getting hit. Purdue ran a lot of simple routes, a lot of easy stuff that got the ball out quick. And that helps. When you ask your line to hold blocks with an immobile quarterback, that gets really, really hard to do. I think if anything, the play calling helped the offensive line not have to do as much. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe that's not. Maybe that was just the Iowa matchup. But Purdue, certainly, that was the best the offensive line has looked in a couple of years. You hope they can build on it. It's not going to be easy against Wisconsin, but you hope the offensive line can improve there. You know, every time there's a big win, we get a question like this, and I love this. I love the optimism. Could you realistically see Purdue only losing 2 more games? And Zach is implying losses to Michigan State and Ohio State. I'm going to pump the brakes there. I think 8-4 from here on out is definitely your best case scenario, losing to Ohio State and then 1 more. If you can, split the schedule into 2 4-2 seasons, that's out of this world. Now, I will say, implying a loss to Michigan State, I'm not counting that as a loss at all. They did not look good against Indiana. 20-15 win in that game. 13 of their 20 points came off of turnovers, basically. They didn't do anything on offense. Indiana does have a nice defense, but they weren't able to do much at all. Indiana should have won that game. If you look at the win expectancies and all the metrics, Indiana should have won that game easily. They just didn't. So I'm not counting that one out, but between Wisconsin, a trip to Nebraska, that's never easy. Michigan State, Indiana's definitely not a gimme. Northwestern has given Purdue fits. Brom's only beaten them once, so I'm not going to say that 8-4 is my prediction, but I won't count it out of the realm of possibility. I think 6-6 or 7-5 are your 2 most likely outcomes. But no matter what, getting to a bowl this year is very, very good. That's a step in the right direction, and I think next year's schedule might be a little more manageable to take another step forward. And then I like this one as well from Hunter. He asked, between Stubblefield, Selwyn Lyman, Rondale Moore, David Bell, who are you taking? And as I told him, one of those is not like the other. Selwyn Lyman had the hype coming out of high school of a Rondale Moore or David Bell. He did not deliver. But of those guys, I'm going to take David Bell. He's more athletic than Stubblefield. He is bigger than Rondale Moore. He is a better pass catcher than Rondale Moore. Moore is certainly the best athlete on that list, but I'll take David Bell. I think he may be the best pure receiver Purdue has ever had. It's not out of the realm of possibility that my preseason prediction of him breaking the single-season yards record, that could still happen with him only playing 11 games. Remember, he missed the Illinois game. You never know. I'll need to do the math to see where he's at right now at the halfway point, but he has the opportunity to put up some big numbers still. That's all I have for you this week. Thank you for spending some time with me. We'll be back next week breaking down the Wisconsin game, see if Purdue ends the streak or not, and then they'll be heading to Nebraska. We'll break down that game as well. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter @BoilersBeyond. That way you can participate in next week's Q&A. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. Until next week, enjoy the game, folks.